What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick. This might be the biggest scam in the tiny house industry. Today we're talking about Incredible Tiny Homes, a tiny house company that is a well-known brand in the industry, but especially here on YouTube. And they've been making some headlines recently, so we've got to put them to our scammer test. If you're new to the channel, please take time to subscribe, and let's find out if Incredible Tiny Homes is a scam. Alright, welcome back. I've got my notes. Today we're talking about Incredible Tiny Homes, and we're specifically trying to answer the question, is Incredible Tiny Homes as a company a scam? This is important for us in general. This is important for all those of you who are interested in buying tiny homes, specifically from Incredible Tiny Homes, but also in general. So we're going to go through the steps that we've talked about in the previous video about how to spot a scammer, but first we're going to talk a little bit about the company in general. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Incredible Tiny Homes is a company that builds tiny homes. They're based out of Tennessee, Newport, Tennessee to be specific. They were created back in 2014. There are currently several complaints against the company, and 2 articles have come out in the past few months about them as well too. But here on YouTube, they're really well known, very popular. They've got 200,000 subscribers. So if we're going back to our original conversation from the How to Spot a Tiny House Scammer video, we're going to put them through the same test. So we're going to go over their website, we're going to go over models, we're going to talk about the agreement, and we're going to see whether or not they pass the test, and then I'm going to leave it to you all to decide whether or not you think it's a scam. Alright, so let's go to the website first. So if you look at their website, it's pretty standard. It looks legit. It goes over their contact information. There's a drop down menu for their models. There's links to their YouTube channel as well too. So in my mind, it looks pretty legit. If we look at their images, remember we can do a reverse image search on Google to check whether or not the images on a company's website are in fact theirs. So if we do that with Incredible Tiny Homes, I selected their Birmingham model. Looks really cool. It's also like one of their more expensive models. So I took that image, put it in Google, did the reverse image search, popped out the results. Turns out that's theirs, so that's legit too. Most of those responses for those images come up, they go directly to them. Remember, we want to look at the images that are just that image, not different variations of that same home. So they passed the website check. So now we have to go to the models check. If you remember, the purpose of the models check is for a few things. One, to see if there's something you can actually put hands on within the company. I personally think that's really important. That's the advice I would give anyone that's looking to buy a tiny home. So for Incredible Tiny Homes, their models, that section seems pretty legit too. They're well known for their Incredibox, so that's their 8x20 footer. That's kind of what built up a lot of their, I guess if you could say, their brand recognition is around the Incredibox. It's $25,000, so it's pretty good price. And the Birmingham model seems like it's theirs and it's legit too. It's in the photos. It checks out for the reverse image search. But when we go to the last part of when we're trying to figure out whether or not we're spotting a scammer in the industry, we have to look at customer reviews. This is where it becomes a little bit, I would say, problematic or potentially problematic. So let's start with the positives. So when I was doing research on this, I wanted to look at 2 different sites, in particular Yelp for one, because that's a pretty popular site. That's where people will go to give, fairly honest reviews of companies. But there's also Better Business Bureau. That takes an extra step. Like if you decide that you want to go and put a comment about a company in the Better Business Bureau, you're trying to sort of either assert or make sure that other customers take note of potential knocks against their credibility. So the positive side is that there's plenty of 5-star reviews where people talk about how they had provided exceptional service. They reached out, they answered, they upgraded things when there was an issue. They came out and checked issues with their tiny home. So the 5-star reviews are pretty standard 5-star reviews you're going to see for any tiny house company, honestly. The issue sort of comes up, at least in my opinion, when you're looking at the 1-star reviews, and there's quite a few of them. So these are the ones I've sort of highlighted and sort of like shown up here on the screen. So there's a couple. One, people asking questions about their tiny house communities, specifically around the internet, and someone responded saying that the internet never works there. And this was from about 4 months ago. So how recent reviews are really, really matters. It's important to look at reviews from way back when, especially if you're only seeing positive reviews and nothing else. But in this particular case, we want to focus on the people who have said things in the past few months, because that's pretty close to right now for us. People have talked about negative experiences, feeling lied to, taken advantage of, sort of like broken promises, that sort of thing. Someone wanted to go and take a tour. They were met with sort of like a condescending tone. Eventually they were told they could do a tour, but they'd have to pay. Paying for a tour is not something that I've ever heard of. So if any of you have any information on this, please drop it in the comments. I'd love to just learn more about that sort of thing, because that kind of seems potentially suspicious to me. But the big kicker was when I found a couple of comments in reviews for 1-star reviews around NDAs. Multiple people said that they were part of the agreement, if you use their financing, is that you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement saying you can't say anything bad about the company on social media. Now, this is really important. One, I don't know if this is actually legal. So for the YouTube lawyers out there, or the lawyers that are watching this video, or if you know anyone who's a lawyer and you can get information from them and then kick it back to us, please do so, because that seems really suspicious to me. People have the right to say what their experience was like. And if you had a negative experience, you do have the right, at least in my opinion, and I think even from a legal standpoint, to say that you had a bad experience. So to have your client sign, and a customer, it's not like a client through like a client consultant agreement. This is like a customer transaction service agreement. So it would be like, in sort of like a more extreme example, it would be like if you went to a store to buy a product, or like you went out to eat and they had you sign a non-disclosure agreement saying you couldn't talk about the food on your social media, or you couldn't talk about the furniture that you got from the furniture store. So that seems really problematic to me. So for those of you who are potentially considering working with them, or if anyone's in the process, I would not encourage anyone to sign an NDA for a product service exchange in this particular realm. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so YouTube lawyers, please comment. Anyone has any information on this, it'd be really fantastic for you all to share it with us, because that's outside of my wheelhouse. But nonetheless, that information is there for us too. So, okay, let's move on to the agreement. This is our last step in sort of putting them through the scammer test. So in looking at the agreement, we don't have like, hard contract language. I don't have that information, but there is their YouTube channel. So that's where, like, one aspect of where I've gone to look at things when I was looking up things about the agreement. And I think it's because the YouTube channel provides a lot of insight on how they communicate with consumers, how they communicate with potential customers, and what they're offering. So we're going to use the YouTube channel as an example of this sort of like agreement phase that you would enter into. So there's 2 particular videos that stand out to me on their YouTube channel, and they're both around their tiny house communities. So for those of you who are not familiar, Incredible Tiny Homes builds tiny homes, but they also have tiny house communities. They sort of are marketed as really low lot rent, and you can put the homes that they build there. I'm not sure if you can put other homes there. I'm assuming you could, but you can definitely put the homes that they build there, obviously. All right, so there's a video about their Buffalo Creek tiny house community. This is from 2023, but what stood out to me is that they were standing in the video. In the video, they were standing in front of a piece of land, and they were saying that you'd have to pay $10,000 to them all at once to reserve your spot in the community. I have never heard of a tiny house community charging people that much money to reserve a spot. And I've talked to a bunch of people in this industry. I've had plenty of tiny house communities on this channel. You can go back and look at those videos. For those of you who are new, most people are not charging that. Some people don't charge anything. Some don't reserve spots, and then some only charge you that 1 month of lot rent, just as like a deposit on your place. So $10,000 is unheard of to me, and it's potentially problematic because, from what I understand, that's going to help fund the development of the community. That's a huge red flag in my opinion. If you give someone $10,000 towards something that doesn't exist, you're running the risk of never seeing that money again, because there's nothing that sort of like holds them to keeping that. So that's kind of where that sort of like stood out with me. Just like a title with like a really big promise in general. If someone's over promising you something, or they're promising something that's like really, really big, that's an area where, from like a consumer standpoint, you need to think about potential opportunities for them to under deliver, if not delivering at all. So $10K to reserve a spot in a tiny house community, again, unheard of. That's a red flag for me. But let's move on to the next video. All right, so the next video is about their Emery Woods tiny house community. This is a new tiny house community that's currently being developed now. The video is pretty recent. It's from a couple months ago. A couple things stood out for me in this video. First and foremost is that they're offering 2 years free on lot rent if you pay up front for one of the their tiny homes. So there's a couple options. You can either pay $120,000 up front for that Birmingham model that we talked about earlier. The first 50 people that do that will get 2 years free on lot rent. There's a similar sort of, I guess, deal or sale, if you will, for some of the cheaper model as well too. For the 59.9 model, the first 50 people will get 2 years free, but they'll also get a 30-year transferable lease. I don't really know how that works. If anyone's familiar with their like transferable lease policies, please drop a comment in there. But the one thing I want to say about this is I would never suggest you pay up front for a tiny home, honestly, for anything of that magnitude. But to give someone $120,000 without like a way to sort of like guarantee that you'll get anything is really, really risky. So right there, when we've talked about this before, in the previous video on how to spot a scammer, upfront cost is a huge area where you can be scammed. And in this case, it's the biggest red flag, probably of anything that we've talked about thus far with Incredible Tiny Homes, because it's also funding the development. So to give someone $120,000 for something that doesn't exist is pretty problematic. You're putting a lot of faith and a lot of money in someone you don't know, which brings me to my next point. Companies do not have a moral obligation to consumers, right? This is something that I mentioned in the previous video, and I'm going to harp on it again and probably again in the future. It doesn't matter what industry it is. And the idea of you being a part of a community, even though it might feel nice, and when you go to the YouTube channel, there's like, you might feel connected to them or like a part of this community of people. It's not actually the case. They're people you don't know. At the end of the day, the idea about community and like the language around community is actually a marketing tactic. The point is to get you to feel comfortable and feel secure. And for those of you who are just genuine people who want to believe that there are people out there who are also genuine, in this case, I would encourage you, or I would say it's not in your best interest to assume the best of people when you're giving them $100,000. At the end of the day, these are businesses, and even YouTube channels are businesses as well too. The purpose for a lot of YouTube channels is lead generation, it is marketing, and it is to turn a profit either through the channel itself being monetized or through the leads that you can then convert into paying customers. So that's what I have to say about the YouTube channel in general. Those are two really important videos if you want to go and watch them, just to sort of, I guess, confirm the things that I'm saying, by all means. But never pay up front for your build. Never give someone $100,000 all at once for your build. That's a huge red flag. All right, last step, we're going to look at the news articles that I found. There's a couple of news articles. The first one is focusing on employees. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Incredible Tiny Homes laid off, they fired like 50 employees back in May. Some of them employees like spoke out in the article, and they talked about how basically they were told that there was no more money left in the company. The owner had no more money. They had no materials, no ability to build anything. But those former employees were then mentioned just being kind of confused because they said they went to the YouTube channel and like the owner is talking about like building homes right away when they know that there's no funds to build them or materials to build them. So this was a big one, just sort of addressing issues related to quality. They talked about the quality being kind of below par and not great quality as well too. So that was in June. And then more recently, literally a few weeks ago, there was an article from the sort of like the city where the company is at that talked about the issues they're having at the county level. So they talked about the existing mountain community for Incredible Tiny Homes that they have, how there's people up there without power. They talked about residents being afraid of retaliation from the company, which now we know is related to potentially those NDAs that they may or may not have signed. And then the county's talking about, in general, just it being like a fraudulent criminal activity, the possibility of them being able to go to the district attorney's office and like potentially press charges, or at least bring the case before someone so they can review it. And then the big kicker is that the business license for Incredible Tiny Homes expired and it has not been renewed. So they're currently operating without a business license. So if we put all of this together and we look at our scam test results on the website end, they check out. The website's legit, it's clean, tons of information, tons of details, all seem to be theirs. On the models end, it's a yes and a no. So I gave it a yellow check because while they do have models, the customer review side, the testimonial side, being able to talk to other people about their builds, you're going to get really mixed reviews. You're going to get like extremes, right? Whenever you get extremes, that's a huge red flag. Whenever you have these like glowing reviews of a company and then tons of one-star reviews saying that the broken promises, they lied, my house wasn't well made, I never saw my house, I didn't get my money back, that's a huge red flag. And then lastly, on the agreement end, it's just a solid no. Between the things at the county level, all of the reviews, the potential NDAs, the upfront money, the community buy-in to help fund the developments that don't actually exist, that's a resounding no for the agreement. So the verdict, in my opinion, if you were to ask, you're asking me, is Incredible Tiny Homes a scam? I would say yes. In my opinion, again, it's my opinion. We just have too much to go off of to have it be any other case, in terms of the reviews, the county getting involved, just the business model in general, putting community members and people at a disadvantage. We're talking about people's life savings. We're talking about older people. We're talking about people that are trusting and believing in just the inherent goodness of people, and people trusting in the things they're seeing through the YouTube channel. So I would say, in my opinion, yes, it's a scam. I'm telling you this because, as I mentioned in the previous video, anyone can be a scammer. The industry is highly unregulated. This is going to continue. If it can happen on a large scale with this company that's been running for 10 years that most people are aware of, it can happen, anywhere in the industry, and you need to protect yourself and your money. So what do you think? If you've I don't know, worked with them is not the best word. If you've considered going with Incredible Tiny Homes, but you changed your mind, drop a comment. If you're currently considering going with Incredible Tiny Homes, I would urge you to reconsider, even though I can't tell you what to do, but please do the research and make sure you guys are checking in on these companies. It's worth the deep dive. I've done a lot of the work here for you, so hopefully you can go back and look at some of these things. There's going to be links to the news article in the video too, so you can check that out. If you know anyone that's gone through an ordeal or something like that with the company, drop in the comments. We just, at the end of the day, want to save people from making mistakes and from losing money and losing time. A lot of people have been waiting years for homes that, they're never going to get from the company. And yeah, if you haven't seen my previous video, check it out. Just going over how to spot a scammer. As always, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me, to talk to each other, to just, be informed. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to think tiny. And I'll see you in the next one.